Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of The Pulse with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. I'm pleased to be joined by Assistant Sports Director from George Washington, Kevin Burke, a Virginia Tech alum, a guy who's well experienced in the sports world, currently working from home like the rest of us. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. How you been?
Billy, I'm doing great. Great to talk to you again.
For sure. It's been a while since we've connected. Full disclosure, me and Kevin actually worked a game together, a Virginia Tech soccer game in the early days of the ACC network. So it's kind of fun to see now what the program and the network has exploded to. But Kevin, like I mentioned, very similar in a lot of ways to me. I mean, a Virginia Tech alum, grew up in Northern Virginia, a big Nats fan. I'm sure we'll get to talking about that later on. And, of course, a big love of sports. So what first made you want to get into working in sports?
Well, I wasn't very good at playing them, which is pretty much what every sports broadcaster says. Um, so yeah, it was basically I played them a bunch as a kid, and then got told when I was basically on the bench as a JV baseball player, hey, you probably need to figure something else out. So I'd always had a passion for broadcasting Madden video games and the whole cliches that you hear with broadcasters, but sort of fell in love with it. And both my parents were Virginia Tech students as well. So there was pretty much only one school that I wanted to go to, and I would figure out the rest from there. And fortunately, I was able to, create my own little niche in Blacksburg and go from there. But it's always been the only thing I've ever wanted to do, and there's been a multitude of ways that you can work in sports, which I found out from my time at Blacksburg, and then definitely the now 8+ years since I've graduated. It's been one of those that I'm still enjoying it every day. So we'll keep on going with it.
And I was interested to read about you that you actually well, first of all, you had a chance to be the PA announcer at your high school for a couple sports, and then you also attended a play-by-play camp. What's that like? Because I feel like those aren't as well known as maybe some of these other camps out there.
Yeah, for sure. So I was basically PA announcer for my high school. I didn't do football because I was on the drum line, but I did every other, basketball, stuff like that. And I'd also gotten started because my mom basically got tired of me broadcasting Madden football games. So I did like local youth football and youth baseball leagues and things like that. But the sports broadcasting camp was something we found when normal kids go outside and do things in the summer. I wanted to go inside, and it was the play-by-play sports broadcasting camp. I think I did a couple of years in Baltimore, and then one year they did it in Washington, D.C. It was a great opportunity. Got to meet some ESPN personalities, got to do some demo tapes at Nats games and Orioles games, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been so long. But I do remember vividly we got to meet like Sal Palantonio from ESPN and got to do stand-ups on the field at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. And that was a lot of fun. And one of the things I didn't know if I was going to be wanting to do this or any good at it, but Sal actually pulled me aside at one point. He's like, you're actually really good at this and you should really pursue it. So that was really exciting and a great opportunity. I know those guys are still doing it. I still follow them on social media, and it's blown up in terms of the number of people that want to be sports broadcasters. So at the time it was really niche and really not as well known. Now it's blown up, and you see with the opportunities to have so many more games broadcast, there's a need for more broadcasters. So it's great to see the development of that program.
And like you mentioned, a unique experience. So then you go to Virginia Tech, and when you were going there, the program was still sort of growing. I mean, you were really one of the first people to say, you wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster and really help build the tradition of the program. So how did you get involved in those early days of the program, trying to get better at your craft and hopefully find an opportunity out there?
Yeah, it's when I went there, I started fall of 2008. There really wasn't anything in terms of opportunities for students to sports broadcast. So I found an ad in the CT literally the first week I was there, needing PA announcers to the athletic marketing department. And so I did an audition within the first month on campus, and they apparently liked what I did. So I started doing PA for volleyball and soccer, and then baseball was the big one. I basically became the PA announcer for baseball. So I got to know a lot of people, got to know the sports information directors, the athletic marketing folks. And then I just bugged Bill Roth enough to finally have him talk to me. No, I'm kidding. Bill's great, but I basically my sophomore year for one of my classes, because I was just taking at that point in the Department of Communication, the only thing that could really do a broadcasting style thing was electronic and print journalism. So there was a broadcasting writing class that was taught by Roland Lazenby. or media writing. I don't remember the exact title of it. But either way, it was Roland Lazenby was a professor who's incredibly well known. He's like the biography writer for Kobe Bryant and a big NBA guy. And one of the reports or one of our assignments was to interview somebody in the sports industry that inspires us and how we can do that. So I'd grown up listening to Bill Ross doing Virginia Tech football games because, again, I was a fan since I was born. So he was always a guy that I wanted to get introduced to, and so I reached out, and couldn't have been kinder in terms of getting the interview set up, and that sort of started the relationship from there. And I was working part-time as a on-field MC and some stuff with the Salem Red Sox, and eventually realized that there could be an opportunity with IMG at that point for an internship just to help out as much as I could. And so I believe it was my junior year, myself and a couple other students were able to jump on. And all we did was, on Monday nights when Tech Talk Live was at Bull and Bones at that point, we were setting things up. We were making sure that the players that were supposed to be interviewed were there, making sure Coach Bieber and Coach Seth Greenberg at that point were taken care of. So really just helping out, setting up the system and just picking the brain of Bill and Andrew Allegretta at that point, trying to see what we could do. And then we also helped set up football broadcasts and things like that. And through that opportunity, it just continued to grow as Andrew came along and really developed the program. And that was the beginning of what it has turned into today. So that was sort of how I got started, and just always trying to look out for more opportunities and just being persistent and I guess being kind of good enough that they wanted to bring me on as an intern.
Seeing what's happened today at Virginia Tech with 3304 Sports, they're a really good organization there to help students get on air, get reps. Are you jealous at all of the opportunities that the people have now, or are you kind of like, I had a chance to be a big fish in a little pond when I was a student at Virginia Tech? I mean, how does that feel, watching these students do their thing now?
I wish my parents had given birth to me about 6 years later. No, it's been awesome to see because, like you said, when we were getting started, the ACC network didn't exist. Like ESPN3 was a big thing, but like if it was just a random game, like there were so many Olympic sports that just weren't covered. So the opportunities were incredibly rare. I know, like the opportunities I got, I was incredibly fortunate to have. I did back when they still did Midnight Madness. Like I got to PA that one time. My senior year, I became the Hokies All Access broadcaster for the softball team, which was basically an online-only radio, and we had video maybe 3 or 4 times. But I knew it was coming, and I knew with Andrew coming on and the the opportunity and the investment that the university was putting in, I knew it was just a matter of time before Tech blew up in this. So I did like the fact that it was a big fish in a little pond, and there weren't many people out there, but the people that were there, myself, Brooks Aker, Brian Marcolini, there's a bunch of other names. Kevin Zanilik was another guy. That we were the 4 guys that wanted to do this type of stuff. So we got basically all the opportunities. In retrospect, it'd be nice to have a brand new studio and to do a bunch of stuff and to be a guy like Evan Hughes is right now, where he's getting NCAA things. But somebody has to lay the groundwork, and I'm happy that I was able to start doing that and allow Tech to take off. And the fact that it's up there competing with the Syracuses and the Arizona States and the Northwesterns and the Missouris is just awesome to see as an alum.
And so then you transitioned to becoming more involved with the Salem Red Sox. You mentioned you had done some emceeing for them, and you become the play-by-play voice. How did that happen, that transition? And what are some of your favorite memories covering minor league baseball? I mean, for a lot of these people in the small towns that are not close to big league cities like me and you are, I mean, this really is their professional team right there.
For sure. I bounced around a ton. I mean, 2 weeks after I graduated, I moved to Oregon, which was all because of relationships and connections from Bill and Andrew with a team out there. And it eventually winded its way to the Salem Red Sox in 2015, I think. Yeah, 2015. And that was because of my time with the internship. I just got to know the team. I got to know the broadcaster. And that actually helped me get a job as a basketball broadcaster at High Point University, just through connections. So when the baseball broadcaster left at Salem, he just sort of called me. He's like, "Do you want to do this?" And I said, "Absolutely." So minor league baseball is definitely challenging. And I totally agree with you. It's a shame what's going to happen with minor league baseball, with what they're going to do with some of these teams, and not having baseball this summer in the minors is devastating, especially for an area like Southwest Virginia that it's 4.5 hours to get to DC if you're lucky. And so like Salem was great, and the Red Sox were a first-class organization. I got to work with some incredible people and incredible players that we probably had one of the most prospect-laden teams my 2016 year. We had Andrew Benintendi, Yohan Moncada, Rafael Devers, Michael Kopech. I think by the next fall, we had 7 guys that had already made the majors, which is unheard of. So those opportunities, we won a first half championship, so it's always fun to be a part of one of those things. But the biggest reward out of all of it was getting to meet a bunch of people, and then also going to places that you've never heard of and getting to explore this country all over the place. Because I've worked in Oregon, I've worked in Michigan, I've worked in Florida, worked in Salem. So there's a bunch of pins in the map that are places you've never heard of, but I got to see because of that.
Is there a unique experience that you remember, whether it's on the field, off the field? I mean, you mentioned you've been all over the country, that you thought, man, I mean, if I wasn't doing this job, I wouldn't have been able to experience that. Anything unique stand out to you?
In a good way or a bad way? Because there's both. I mean, just the fact that when I was in Salem specifically, I always harken back to that 2016 team. I was sitting in a dugout interviewing Dave Dombrowski, who was in charge of the Red Sox at that point, like a one-on-one opportunity. That's not what anybody gets to do. You know, very few people get that opportunity. Most national broadcasters don't get that opportunity. Here I am, a 25-year-old broadcasting high A baseball, and he took the time to chat for 10 minutes. Same thing goes when I'm sitting there talking to Benintendi and Devers, and I'm like, these guys are going to be all-stars. And I think that year Benintendi ended up hitting a home run in the playoffs. Like, just seeing that whole thing and creating those relationships, and then that's just such a unique experience to see these guys before they become these guys that you hear of every single day. Even on the other team, there's so many guys. There's back when I was an intern, Eric Hosmer was playing in that league. Anthony Rizzo was playing in that league. So as a baseball geek like myself, that's really cool. But then unique experiences, there's plenty. Everything you hear about minor league baseball, from tarp poles to the weirdest delays because the lights don't come on to, I think there was one game my first year I had to call on my cell phone because my mixer fried just 30 minutes before the game. It just stopped working. So I just had to call the station and broadcast the game that way. So it really sets you up to challenge yourself in ways you don't expect, and it allows you to grow into a professional. And really, minor league baseball has a special place in my heart because it's not for everybody, but it really hardens you and makes you better.
How unhealthy was the food? I've heard, you travel minor league teams. I mean, you're probably not eating healthy for a while. How unhealthy was the food? I mean, was like pizza you were eating pretty often, or?
Yeah, it's not great. There's some places that I really will not eat a chicken finger for 3 years because of it. I ate way too many chicken fingers, way too many meals late at night, tons of ballpark food. I would try to pitch in and get in on the team's meal as best as I could because they eat slightly better. But yeah, health and diet is not a thing in minor league baseball. So I will say I did work in Memphis one year in 2017 as a media relations assistant. It's sort of my transition out of broadcasting. And that place was top notch. That was major league style. They had catering, everything like that. So much like a pro trying to get up in the levels when you're going from low A to triple A, there's a big difference.
And you mentioned that transition. You transitioned to Memphis to be a media relations assistant, and ultimately that lands you back up near your hometown with GW. What was that transition like, and how difficult was it, if at all? I mean, you wanted to be a broadcaster, but you wanted to be in sports. I mean, was it kind of a good and bad to it? I mean, how was that whole transition like?
Yeah, I had a lot of dark and difficult days, that's for sure. Minor league baseball takes it out of you. It's 140 games in 150 days. So like I said, it's not for everybody. And after doing it for, 5 years, it was, push came to shove. At that point, it's not full time. There's no benefits. You're barely getting paid. You're working 14-hour days. So push came to shove in terms of like, okay, let's see what we can do. And I still wanted to continue broadcasting and still be involved as best I could. And I was really starting to enjoy the basketball broadcasting I was doing with High Point University for college. I had started that in the fall of 2013. And I really just enjoyed that more, just the college aspect of things, there's pros and cons to both sides. So 2016 came and went, and I sort of decided to, put my neck out there a little bit more and see, and this opportunity came up in Memphis, and it was, it felt like the right fit for me to get some more experience, especially at a higher level. The AAA level is so much different than everything else. Basically, you're in a bigger city. You're playing with guys that are on the doorstep of the majors, if not, I've already played in the majors. And that was a great opportunity. Then it was really quick. It wasn't anticipated. I was planning on going there for the summer and then reevaluating what I wanted to do. And an opportunity at High Point came up for a full-time position. And when you dangle a full-time position with salary and benefits in front of a guy who doesn't know what that's like for 5 years and trying to make ends meet, that was at a place that I liked and with people I liked. That was an opportunity I could pass up. And then the sports information role sort of took off from there. And I still did broadcasting at High Point for the year, but then the allure of coming to DC and working with a place like GW where I can be an hour from my parents is pretty important to me. So that's sort of a winding road how we got through that media relations transition. But I will say I still miss broadcasting here and there. I don't miss the 14-hour days. I don't miss the bus rides. You talk about unique experiences. We could have 2 hours, and I'll tell you about some unique bus rides we had. But I don't miss those, but it still, has a place in my heart.
And what's your day-to-day like at GW? Obviously, it's a lot different now, I'm assuming, with the pandemic. But under quote-unquote normal times, what's your day-to-day like with GW?
I was going to say my current day-to-day is wearing a T-shirt and sitting at my kitchen table for 8 hours. No, so it's much more orchestrated and organized. I'm responsible for primarily our women's basketball program as well as our baseball, volleyball, track and field, tennis, and women's rowing program. So it's very busy. It's not just one team. I cover 11 teams at once, primarily women's basketball. So I go on the road, travel with them. I do not travel for any of the other sports, but I'm in charge of all the social media. I'm in charge of all the press releases, the game notes, all the stuff that I was using as a broadcaster, I'm now creating. So I get the question, oh, you miss broadcasting a lot. Like I said, I do, but in reality, I'm still doing the same stuff, except that once the game starts, I'm not broadcasting, I'm just tweeting, and I'm watching, and I'm looking for stories to share. That's still the main crux of everything. It's still the same thread of we're looking to share stories, and that's how we do our profession. But during the summer, it's nice because I have a summer. Again, this is a different summer. But not having to work 14-hour days during the week during the summer was great. It's busier around the holidays and things like that, but college basketball is great, and I get to go to a bunch of new places and some big cities here in the A10, which is pretty cool.
I have to ask you because, like I said, you work in college athletics, but as you know, I mean, this pandemic has sort of uprooted everything normal about American life, and now it's looking like it's kind of hard to see whether or not college sports can happen in any capacity this fall. A lot of schools have already canceled fall sports altogether. Your school, GW, just announced that classes were going to be online a few days ago. I mean, how confident are you that we will see college sports return in the nearby future? I mean, your alumni, Virginia Tech, my school, we'll see if football even happens. But what's your thoughts on the whole situation?
I'm not medically qualified to answer that question, but I think the way it's trending, it's not going to be – I think it's already guaranteed it's not going to look anything like what we've expected. You can't make an NHL bubble. You can't make an NBA bubble. We've already seen how difficult it is with what's going on with the Marlins and Major League Baseball to try and do it with traveling. Now you're talking 18 to 22-year-old kids who are student athletes and trying to, for universities to bring them on campus and say they can come, but other students can't. Now you're starting to get some fine line stuff. I think we're not going to be able to get back to normal, obviously, until there's a vaccine. I find it incredibly difficult to believe that college football is going to happen this fall. I know there's a lot of other extenuating circumstances in terms of TV deals and contracts and things like that. But at the end of the day, health and safety has to be the number one thing. So if we have to play football in the spring, let's play football in the spring. But hopefully, I think we can get basketball going. That's a much smaller confine. You can do some pods. You can kind of do some bubble stuff with basketball. You can go conference only much easier there and sort of just do some pods on weekends things. I've already seen some ideas floated out about that. I just find it difficult to believe football is going to be able to be played at this point. And I do not envy the administrators and the school presidents that are trying to figure this out because the financial impacts are the biggest thing. And especially for Power 5 schools, like if you look specifically at Virginia Tech, football pays for the other sports. So if football can't be paid, there's going to be some really hard decisions that's going to happen, not just at Tech, but across the country.
I wanted to ask you about your alma mater, Virginia Tech. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were there as a student, that was still sort of the years where the Virginia Tech was a contender in the ACC. And then really in the years after. And as I've been there the last 5 years, the Hokies have, had some good seasons, but have kind of been mediocre at the end of the Beamer era and then for a couple of seasons here in the Fuente era. So what's your thoughts on all of that? I mean, what does Virginia Tech need to do to get back to being a contender in the ACC, maybe even for national titles like they were at the beginning of your student career and at the tail end of that?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I basically got the last 4 good years, if people want to say, of Coach Beamer. And honestly, every year Coach Beamer was there was a good year because Coach Beamer is the most utmost stand-up individual, and I got to work with him and deal with him. And he has no business having to be as courteous as he was to a student intern that was just, deer in the headlights whenever he was talking to him. But yeah, we got to go to 3 ACC championships when I was there. We only won, I guess we won 2 of them. Went to 2 Orange Bowls, a Sugar Bowl, and the Chick-fil-A Bowl. And the Chick-fil-A Bowl team probably was arguably one of the best teams we had that didn't really do anything. We had Tyrod for a couple of years. So you want to know how you get back? Go find a Tyrod. We'll take him. But yeah, I always joke that the Hokie football as we know it died at the Sugar Bowl when Danny Cole caught the ball, and they say he did. I was right there. He caught the ball. But I give my brother crap because he came in right after me, similar time to you, Billy, where it was just like, things sort of hit that wall. But you see flashes, right? Like when Gerard Evans came in 2016, like Tech has the ability to get up there again. And I think the first step needs to be continuously fighting for the Coastal Division, whereas even these last couple of years, like they haven't been the Tech that I knew growing up, but they're still right there. They're a game or 2 away. Last year, they were 5 minutes away for beating UVA and getting to go. I don't think you can expect a Clemson-like meteoric rise anytime soon, solely because of the amount of investment that Clemson has in terms of the pure money and things that they have coming into their program. It all starts with I'll sound like Whit Babcock. It starts with donors. But the investments in the university and that stuff, you can bring in all the recruits you want, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the investment from the fan base and investment from the university to get those teams to that level. That's why you see the same 4, 5, 6 teams in the playoff every year, because they're the ones that are so far head and shoulders ahead. But I think you can see where you have a transformational player come in, whether that be a Michael Vick or a Tyrod Taylor, that can bring Tech up to the top 5 or top 10 or compete with Clemson. Again, that 2016 team was, 10 yards away from going for 2 to potentially beat a team that won the national championship. So they're not far off. I personally, as an alum, get frustrated every now and then, but then, I have to trust the process and remember, everybody wanted to run Beamer out of town after 5 years too. So I hope they get better. I was really looking forward to this year because this is probably going to be the best team since my senior season in 2012, or the 2011 season, I guess. But hopefully we'll be able to get to play. I was looking forward to going down and seeing play Penn State and whatnot, but we'll just have to wait on that.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Given the anticipations of the season, if it does happen, and the Hokies, maybe have a subpar season, do you think Justin Fuente is on the hot seat, or do you think, just given everything going on, it's hard to really, blame him if something, is subpar this season?
I think it's going to be really tough for any athletic director to deal with these types of questions in general this fall. I hate to keep coming back to this. It always comes down to money. And I think it's very public what the contract numbers are. So it's going to be really tough for that type of thing. But the expectation of the Virginia Tech fan base will never change. It should be 10 wins, Coastal Championship, and fight for an ACC title. You do that a couple years in a row, you're golden. But the reality is how tough that is actually to do year in and year out really makes me, if I could possibly, respect Coach Beamer even more. Because the fact that there were some teams that had no business winning 10 games. That 2018, my freshman year, there was 3 quarterbacks. We started Corey Holt one year at quarterback because Tyrod got hurt in the first play. I think it was at Florida State. There's no business that team had winning 10 games and pulled it out of the past. So I don't want to say he's going to be on the hot seat, but I know that from the fan base perspective, he probably already is. But I think internally, I don't think there's anything you can say about that, especially with everything going wrong.
And being an SID, you probably have even a better perspective now than you did as just a fan. I mean, money and all those other components that factor into success I mean, you really have, I think, a greater appreciation for everything that goes behind the scenes of a collegiate athletic department.
For sure. And you see a lot more about coaches and players when you're inside that the public will never see. You don't get to see the true relationships. You don't get to see the practices day in and day out. You get the public perception of it. And when you only see somebody 3 hours a week or 4 hours a week on a Saturday and try to make an assumption off that, it's really tough. So I do definitely have an appreciation for the inner workings of how athletic departments work. Hence, 8 years ago, me would not have been saying, well, it's all about money. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of extra circumstances that fans may not understand solely, and I have that benefit of just being inside athletic departments and seeing how those years turn.
I wanted to talk about your other favorite team, my favorite team as well, the Nationals, the defending world champions. I mean, how about last year? An incredible run, 19-31, make it to the wild card game after incredible turnaround. And then, see the cup. That's good to see. Juan Soto has that big hit in the wild card game, and then you've got the Dodgers, Howie Kendrick home run, NLCS, World Series, the way that ended. I mean, what was your reaction I'm sure as like me, a long-suffering fan, to see the team finally put it together in a season where they didn't start off well, but ultimately ended up capturing the title?
Yeah, fortunately, I'm also a Caps fan, so the hangover was gone in 2018, and that was more pure elation because since I had been born, DC sports had done nothing. So to have the first one, that was awesome. But then the Nats, I mean, I very vividly remember them being 19-31 on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend last year, and I was driving out of town to go hang out with some friends for the weekend. And I remember, I don't usually listen to a ton of sports talk radio. It's just not my thing. But I turned on the local, the station the Nats are on here in DC, and I listened to the morning shows, and every single person was wanting Davey fired. Every single one. And the guys on the radio were like, we can't blame you. It's like, why hasn't this happened yet? He hasn't done anything. And I was with them. I was like, this team is done. They play terrible. I had given up on them, but that was sort of the DC sports, and my friends and people will tell you I'm usually very negative when it comes to sports in general. But to see what happened was just awesome. Like I didn't believe anything that was happening. Like the wild card game, I think they gave up a home run 2 batters in. I was like, well, here we go again. Like what to expect. I went to the Dodgers game 3 when they got blown out, and I was like, well, we're done. I never expected that. Basically, a week later, I got tickets to Game 4 of the NLCS and watched the Nats win the National League with a 7-run first inning and everything like that. It was just the most surreal feeling, and I didn't actually like put it. It didn't really hit me. But while I was sitting there, thanks to the fact that they scored 7 runs in the first inning, I was there with a friend, and I was sitting there. We were talking about, some of the really, really, really bad Nats teams. And some of the stuff that we had gone through, like I was there opening night of the ballpark in 08 when they wanted to walk off. But aside from that, when I was going to college and everything, there were some teams I'm like, oh God, do you remember when Matt Chico threw a ball through a windshield? Like, do you remember this? And like I remember 2012 vividly, 2014 that was its own thing, but 16 was bad, 17, and like it all just started flooding back type of thing. And then finally when that happened, it was just pure elation. And then it was almost at that point like the World Series was gravy. Like I can say this now because they won. Like if they had lost, whatever. Like they made the World Series. I got to see my team in the World Series, which was always a goal of mine. But growing up as an Orioles fan in the '90s, I still resent Jeffrey Nair. But yeah, it was. I freaked out a little bit. My roommate could probably tell you how much I freaked out when they won. But I got to go to the parade, which was really cool, and to see Zimmerman out of all of them, because that's the guy that's like we've literally grown up with him. To see him from start to finish, that was really cool. So I bought all the stuff. I've got all the flags. I've got everything. I've got the thermos. So I will brag about it. And now I'm back. I'm glad the sports are back this year because I'm already getting mad at the Nats this season. So I'm glad I can get mad at them and we're not worrying about something else.
Do you think the MLB will be able to finish the season? I mean, we saw what's happened with the Marlins. Again, I know you're not a medical doctor, but just your opinion as a sports fan and your involvement in athletics. How confident are you that you think we'll be able to carry out a season, 60 games, and ultimately a playoffs?
I think they're going to have to get lucky, if I'm being honest. I think I hate being one that says this, but if this wasn't the Marlins, if this was the Yankees, what would have happened?
Yeah.
Like I know that MLB wouldn't say that, but I think they'd be a lot different, especially from a national perspective. We'll see. I mean, outside of the Marlins, it's been pretty good. It sounds like the Juan Soto test was a false negative or a false positive. So I've been really impressed with what the NBA has done, and MLS and NHL especially, because NHL has no positive tests going into the bubble. And as long as nobody goes out to get some wings at a joint a couple hours away, so they should be fine. I think it'll be interesting for Major League Baseball. I think they can do it. I think they just need to get much stricter in terms of the protocols, because it seems like they've been caught off guard by a bunch of this stuff. But we'll see. There's a lot of stuff. Again, I don't work in baseball, so I don't know all the inner machinations of it. I think it'll be tough, but I'm going to enjoy every single game as much as I can until they say there's no more baseball until 2021.
What's the next big thing you want as a sports fan? I mean, you mentioned it. The Nats have won a championship. The Caps have won a championship. What's next on your list of what you want to see? Is it Virginia Tech winning a championship? Is it the Washington football team now winning a Super Bowl? I mean, what's at the top of your list?
Everybody's always said that back when, the Caps and Nats weren't winning. It's like, okay, rank what you would want in terms of 1 through whatever. Tech football will always be number 1, because college sports to me is just you get a connection to it, right? You're a part of the school. You can be a Nats fan, but you're never going to play for the Nats. You can be a part of the success for Virginia Tech, whether it's by donating to the Hokie Club or anything like that. So Tech football now, especially with the Nats and Caps having won that, I'm good on them. I say that now. If it gets October, if the Caps playoff run this month, I will get mad when they lose. But yeah, Tech football from the beginning was always the number 1 thing, because I think there's just a sense of ownership that you can feel like you were actually a part of it. You could really help change get them to that level. Again, I don't play. Nobody wants to see me play football. But yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest thing. And then now that, I'm getting older, it's going to be attending a bunch of things that I haven't seen. So hopefully we got some potential plans to go, see some big golf tournaments, or get to a Super Bowl, get to a Final Four, get to a college football championship game, just as a fan. That's probably bigger than, any team championship. And the Washington football team, they're almost dead to me.
Two final questions for you. My first is, what's your advice to people who want to get in sports like you? I mean, obviously now it's a tough time, whether you want to get into broadcasting or being a SID with the pandemic. We don't know when sports will return to normal, so to speak. So what's your advice to people who want to get involved now?
Yeah, the thing that I've always been taught is to start early. Like I said, there's not going to be a perfect opportunity for yourself. Like me, when I went to Tech, there was no broadcasting, and I knew I wanted to do it. So you have to almost be okay with creating your own opportunities and going above and beyond. I was like, okay, what's the next best thing? Well, PA announcing. Okay, let's do that. So getting to know as many people, especially if you're in college or high school, you have so many opportunities directly in front of you to work with the athletics department. And now, having worked in the athletics department, the one thing we will always take is more student help, because we could always use help and things like that. But not limiting yourself to, I only want to do broadcasting. Well, if I had thought about that, I would definitely not be in the chair that I'm currently sitting in. Trying to, to broaden your horizons as best you can. It's like, you can't expect that you're going to be a major league broadcaster within 4 years. There's some guys that are really good and you get those opportunities, but if specifically for broadcasting, get as many sports under your belt as you can. Or if you're wanting to be a writer, get as many sports as under your belt as you can. And that leads me to another point. Always keep writing, because writing will change everything for you. If you can write, that's going to take you along a lot of places, because writing betters your ability to talk and then communicate, and thus that can help you go a lot of places. And everybody will take good writers. They'll find a way for you to get in. Specific to the pandemic, just, there's going to be a lot of people that, or a lot of positions that are going to be eliminated, and it's not going to be up to how good those people are. So, but eventually we're going to get back to normal, and eventually those positions are going to need to be filled. So don't get your hopes up too down. Don't take anything personally. Always be open to criticism and critique, because that's one of the biggest things I got from my time at Tech, was just like, these people, especially the people I worked underneath, are always trying to get better as well. And if they're accepting criticism and critiques, the least you can do is accept criticism and critique. So those are just a couple of bullet points I can think of off the top of my head.
And my final question for you is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 or 10 years? I mean, I know you're happy right now being, in your hometown, working for a reputable school like GW, still in sports, so happy to still be with your passion. Do you ever think about that? Do you have a feel for where you want to be in 5, 10 years from now?
I wish I did. I don't want to think about the fact that in 10 years I'll be 40. I just turned 30, so let me get an idea of this. It's interesting to think about, because if I were to tell you 5 years ago that I'd be here, I would have said no chance. So I don't want to limit myself, and I hope I'm still working in sports at that point. But media relations is not just a sports business. So there may be a time when the sports schedule of college sports doesn't align with the schedule that I want for my life. So I used to keep it open. I would love to stay here in DC as best I can, because it allows me to go to Nats games and Caps games and stay relatively close to Tech while I can. And all my family, I shouldn't say all, most of my family lives here. I have a couple cousins that live a couple hours away and things like that. But that's always super beneficial as well. So we'll see. I don't really have any plan, but as of now, I'll still raise either buff and blue.
Kevin, I can't thank you enough for being willing to catch up. Really, it's been our first time in a while that we had chatted, so it's good in this sense, in this forum, to be able to catch up. Again, thanks for taking some time to chat with me, and best of luck in your endeavors. And go Nats, Caps, all DC sports. Hopefully, we'll get another championship here some point in our lives.
Let's hope so. Let's hope we don't have to wait 30 more years again. But appreciate it, Billy, and as always, we'll talk again soon.
For Kevin Burke, that's the assistant sports director at George Washington University. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. This has been the latest edition of The Pulse with BP. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.